Hallo Freunde, willkommen zurück zu .NET API Review. We have two red things today and a couple non-red things. Yeah, I expect we'll get through about half, aka everything not marked as future. All right, first up, data ingestion document representation, .NET extension 6893. Mr. Sitnik, you're up.
Yes. So data ingestion is currently an experimental project that I'm working on. We are not promising to ship it in November, but we will try. So that's the first notice. To tell the long story short, as you know, people are now using LLMs, but not every company is willing to use their data to train LLM. And for that, we have RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation. So we provide the LLM with a capability to connect to our vector store and there perform vector search for the data that we own and we kind of own. But to be able to get to RAG, you need to process your documents, chunk them, and write them to a vector store. And this is what this project is about. So we later in the second issue, I'm going to talk about pipeline, reader, and all of that. But in this issue, I wanted to discuss how to represent a parsed document. So we have a base class called document element and multiple types that derive from document section, document paragraph, header, image, table, and footer. They all have to provide Markdown, and I have decided to use Markdown as a must-have because all LLMs speak Markdown. It's token efficient, everybody can understand it, and it can express quite a lot. Moreover, all of the readers and similar products, they use Markdown as well. So Markdown is mandatory for document element, text is not. When they can be different, for example, for image, the Markdown would be, the Markdown required to insert an image to your Markdown document, but the text would be typically the result of the OCR. Page number is also not mandatory, it's nullable, because some of the readers, they split everything into pages, some of the parsers, some, for example, turn every document to just a raw Markdown, and absolutely don't use the concept of page number. To be honest, I believe that from the perspective, it hardly ever matters. On top of that, we have data, which allows users to provide any information that cannot be expressed with public API provide. The first type that is from document element, document section, it's basically a group of document elements. However, what is important, document section can contain nested sections. Next type is document paragraph, which doesn't have anything special. Then we have document header, which comes with an optional level, and document footer, and document table. In contrary to other types, document table is requiring the users to also specify two-dimensional array of cells. Why is that? So at the later stage, once the document is read, it's being chunked. And when we chunk our table, we cannot split them in the middle of the row. So the chunker needs to have the ability to work with individual rows to be able to basically repeat headers in every chunk and then provide the cells that are part of the given. So this is why it's not just Markdown. For document image, we have content, just read memory byte, media tag, and alternative text. And all of them create a document. So a document is something that has an identifier, mandatory, It has a list of sections, and it also comes with the markdown. And here we're definitely going to discuss the name back and forth. I have used the name because it's called Vector, but now it's very generic. In the alternative design, I'm proposing different names. But one thing I have noticed, I'm working on this project as a student, and I have noticed that dealing with nested sections is not very intuitive. So this is why I extended the document with INV implementation, which gives a flattened document presentation. So if we take a look at the IP usage down below, just scroll, Jeremy, a bit. You can see we have a document with the root section, title, paragraphs, and then nested section, which has another title, 2 paragraphs. The flat result will just return header, paragraph, header, paragraph. Because not everyone needs information about those being nested. Yeah. And as you can see in this example, creating a document quite straightforward. What is also important when chunking, it's the type of the document elements. And one common thing is different handling of images, for example. So instead of Markdown, we use the alternative text or the text in the heading itself. For alternative designs, as I mentioned, the document name is very generic. I'm aware of that. My current best idea for a different name is document content or a document. Moreover, I have noticed that the fact that document implements item arrayable of document element may be hard to discover by the end users. So because of that, it may be just easier to add explicit flatten method, similar to what aggregate exception provides, I believe. For the reason that I wanted to mention, exposing public dictionary of string can cause serialization headache in the future. And the reason I added such dictionary is that for this particular metadata, it's currently not used anywhere where I'm building the pipeline. However, some of the customers I have been talking to, they have expressed a desire to do something more than just track. For example, one potential scenario would parse the document, store the information about where the elements are, which I'm not exposing in my model because it's not important for RAG, and I didn't want to spend a lot of time on finding the best way to express the location of every document on a page, etc. But the scenario people wanted to be able to provide is parse given document, then use LLM to just translate it, and at the end of the pipeline, just recreate the document but with a different language and just replace the contents basically. Stefan?
Yes. Is the document sections property supposed to have a setter?
It does not come with a setter as of now.
So in the API usage, you set sections. Is it supposed to be like init only? Like, how does it work?
That's the collection pattern. It is a list.
Okay.
You can add to it.
Oh, I see. Of course. All right. Thank you. It makes more sense.
There's an add
All
method
right.
somewhere?
Then that answers my next question. So it does add. Yeah.
It's
I
C#
see it's a getter.
typing
I see.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got it. And then when you enumerate a document, it's going through all the elements in each section, so you wouldn't be able to see the sections basically if you're just enumerating the document directly.
Yes, if you use the enumerator, you wouldn't. And the reason I excluded them is that the person I have been working on, I have noticed that in all of the usages, they were like using where document element is not section. So basically, all of the usages of the flatten method, they kind of wanted to exclude the sections on purpose. But you can
But-
always get the sections just from the sections property.
It just seems a little odd, right? Because sections can have subsections as demonstrated here. So it's like, why would I only want the top level sections removed automatically? Or is that happening at every layer?
At every layer. So you just
Okay.
get the elements. Because,
I see.
for example, later I'm going to talk about chunkers. And we provide one chunker where you can just say that each section is its own chunk. And people sometimes do it, for example, when they are doing RAG for PowerPoint presentation, where every page is represented as a single section with just a few elements, and that's it. But when in case where you don't care about the structure, but for example, only about the semantic content, meaning, then the fact that, for example, there is a section and subsection, if they all mention the same thing, you would like to have them in the same chunk. So you ignore the fact that that it's a section and subsection. You basically care only about the fact that there is a header, 2 paragraphs, and another header and 2 paragraphs, and they have the same, they talk about the same thing. Andrei?
Could you repeat again, why do you need the document footer?
Document footer is just a type that allows to express footers. So the parsers that I was using, they some of them, like Azure Document Intelligence and Llama Parse, they recognize footers. And so it's just another type to represent a different element.
So, like, is it semantically different from a paragraph? So it's like saying that it's not, like, it doesn't carry as much weight in some way?
So yes, it's also a paragraph, but it has a different role, right? But the fact that it's a different type allows us to easily exclude footers. And later, when we are going to discuss the pipeline and the processors, I'm actually providing a utility for removing them because typically they contain just the page numbers, and I don't think that they matter for the embedding generation. But
Right.
we are
What-
not
what-
removing them by default. We are just expressing it that, hey,
Would a
here comes the footer.
footnote be in a footer, or would a footnote just be in a content section?
Could you repeat?
A footnote. So you're reading some text and it says 3, and then you look at the bottom of the page and it says 3, and then has an explanation for it. Is that a footer or not?
It is a footer.
Okay.
But it may be also specific to the implementation of given parser. Just to give you an example, some of the parsers that I was working with, for some of them, a list is just a section that contains few paragraphs, but for some of them, it's one gigantic paragraph. So, yeah. The goal of this API is to be able to express that.
What I was getting at is whether we could have something more generic to express a piece of document that doesn't carry weight. So maybe like a comment or metadata, anything else.
Yeah, so for
Yes.
example, a document paragraph would have a role, right? Like a header, a footer, or none, which would be just paragraph. This is what you mean?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Like it seems like footer is a very specific term, and we could make it more general.
Yeah, we could do that based on my experience when I was implementing some of the chunkers. When it comes to their semantic content, it's always the markdown property, so we don't care about that. But header level plays an important role when it comes to providing the context and when splitting the documents. So we want to definitely differentiate headers. And for footers, I also wanted to differentiate them because I believe that they typically contain something that is not important for the embedding itself. And so I agree that we could express it with a single type that has a single property that allows to express the role. But then I think that, for example, getting the header level would be a bit more tricky because we would need to check that this document paragraph has a role of a header, and then we would need to access the metadata and know that it should have a key called, let's say, level, and it contains an integer. So
Yeah.
for me, having a strongly typed things, it was just easier way to express it.
Yeah, I don't have anything against headers or them being strongly typed.
Okay.
I'm more wondering about the term that's used, like footer,
Okay.
instead of something more generic, like a comment or something in that style.
And just talking semantic elements of documents, like when doing layout to make sense for an ebook, they decided that these footnotes should be table footers instead of page footers, but this is a footnote and this is semantic, so footnotes are not semantic. Now this is a very semantic footnote. It says it shouldn't be on my screen right now, but yeah. I guess I'm not redistributing. I'm screen capping. And then this is also footer, but like a thing considered a foot of something is not always not useful. So either you need a different thing to talk about this, or a different way that you should talk about it, or you just need to admit that anybody, if this gets classified as a footer, that what you're saying by ignoring them is you're throwing away useful content.
Yeah. So we are not throwing anything away, but we allow the people to throw it away if they want to.
Sure, but I'm just by not making a distinction between semantic and non-semantic kinds of, like a footnote versus a page number. Like they're wildly different in their importance, but you're calling them the same thing.
Okay, now I get what you mean. Yeah. When I was implementing those APIs, I have implemented 3 different readers. For one for Azure Document Intelligence, another for Llama Parse, and another for Markdown, which are like well-known products in the industry. And I think only one of them made the distinction. And if I remember correctly, it was the Azure Document Intelligence.
Fair enough. It's a thing that you kind of seem to be waving off footers as less important data, or Andre was suggesting renaming it to comment, but like sometimes it's just this doesn't flow well with where the data needs to go. Like that table, we couldn't have the explanation sitting in line in the cell.
Yeah. So the solution would be to have like 2 elements, page footer and footnote, right?
I mean, that would be a solution. I don't know if it's the right one. I'm just pointing out that there are different kinds of footers. There's footnotes, there's endnotes, there's page footers, there's page headers, which are different than section headers. But I feel like document header here you're really treating as a section header, and you've ignored page headers. Like, pretty sure I have headers on these pages. Yeah. Like, that would be the header on this page, which is different than this header.
Yeah.
So
But the reason I did that was that, you know, I have tried to find like a common ground for all of the services that I was working with, and as I said, only Azure Document Intelligence makes such a distinction.
Is this around Markdown only formats, or it can support any other formats?
So it expects that we are later going to talk about the pipeline and the reader. It expects that any reader that you provide speaks Markdown, and it returns information in Markdown format.
So this is scoped for Markdown only, I mean format, right?
Right.
Okay, so if this is the case, so it should match whatever, I mean, Markdown can provide. I mean, like, you know, in Markdown, you can have like header 1, header 2, header 3, right? I mean, can have tables you already have table here, but what I mean, like, you know, it's bold on italic or some stuff like that. If you want to express the document here, if it is scoped for Markdown, so it should match whatever features that Markdown has. I mean, this should be reflected in this design. The other question I have here is, why did we go? I mean, like, why Elements doesn't have child elements? I mean, instead of sections. I mean, like, so you can navigate elements down instead of like have sections. And just a question. I mean, like,
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to restrict some of the things. For example, I didn't want to have a possibility to have a header with children.
Yeah, if somebody specifies that, so this would be the problem of, it's like, you know, HTML. I mean, like, you can specify whatever inside the HTML. I mean, if they say this is header, so it's a header. I mean, if it's footer, it's footer. I mean, and they can have a child inside this element. But I mean, like, so the author of this document will be the responsible one who makes sure that this is correct. I'm just like giving like apparatives, like other format like HTML or something like this.
I understand. Yeah. So. Yeah. So I kind of didn't want let the people to create things that I believe are invalid, and kind of make the other part of the pipeline simpler thanks to that. So we only know that a section can have children. And by the way, at the proposal at the bottom, I think I have pasted a link to my project where you can find all of the samples, integration with Aspire, tests, all of that. And if any of you is willing to give it a try, please let me know. I'm more than happy to any kind of feedback.
Yeah, I mean, like the bottom line, I mean, here is, if I give you any Markdown section document, I mean, you should be able to represent it or parse it to this document, right?
Right.
And this is the case. I mean, like, if I give you any possible Markdown section document, I mean, like.
Yeah. So I have implemented plenty of tests where I'm parsing some presentations, some specifications in Word, in PDF. I did also something for audio files. Yeah, and I was able to represent everything with what I have here so far.
Okay, so where you represent, for example, about like italic, bold, strikeout, or stuff like that.
So this is simply part of the Markdown string. I didn't want to kind of to have a dedicated type for that. And as I said, like once the document is parsed, we may chunk it or enrich it with some metadata, and we use LLMs for both things, and they understand Markdown.
So, you have a virtual property that has the same name as a mandatory constructor parameter. So, explain your virtual property.
So the providing Markdown upfront is mandatory. However, it's not always possible to provide it with a section because you may not know it upfront. So the document section is overriding Markdown and it's basically returning it as a concatenation of the elements Markdown.
So every time you access the markdown property of a section, it's a massive string concat.
Yes.
Okay, then it's not allowed to be a property. Properties must be amortized as fast as a field access. You're not allowed to do concatenation in them.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you shouldn't be really using a markdown of section. In all of our chunkers, we care about the elements. So it's expensive because I don't expect anyone to use it. We could cache it as well, but then if somebody adds an element to the list, we would need to invalidate it.
I mean, I think just make it a get markdown method. It just, if it's a markdown property, then somebody might say, you know, for I up to, you know, element.markdown.length, and every time they refresh, or every time they hit the next loop in that for loop, it's doing all the string concats over and over and over and over again. People think properties are O1 access, so they need to be.
Okay.
So if you need to do the dynamic concatenation, it needs to be a method.
Okay. I don't mind changing it to a method.
Okay.
So going back to the header and footer discussion, and related to what Jeremy said about page header and page footer, as opposed to footers for a table, an image, or a paragraph of a footnote. Perhaps we can distinguish the two. So a more general term for a page footer and page header is a running marginal. So I'm not sure whether that's too technical for this. But perhaps it could be called just a marginal. And the footnotes and other things that are more likely to carry semantic meaning could be either just normal paragraphs or a note, document note type, if we want to distinguish them. But this might be overthinking it. I don't know.
In the meantime, I'm looking at what information do the parsers provide typically.
Okay,
know
a
what-
question that has come up in chat is document element has a dictionary property called metadata. When does the dictionary object of that get created, and how often does it have data in it?
It gets created on the first call. It's lazy.
Right. So the question is, should we have a has metadata property that people can use to avoid creating the dictionary to find out that it's empty?
I really like this question because when I was designing this class, I have logged an issue in the runtime that JIT should recognize such a pattern where we have something like class.dictionaryProperty.count greater than 0 and be able to say that it's null. But the conclusion was that calling this property has a side effect of creating the dictionary, and some reflection could rely on that, and JIT shouldn't be making such assumptions. So I think it's fair to add such a property.
Okay.
Can I still talk a little bit about the table? Because right now it says the cells are string. That basically means you cannot have like image in a table, which I would say is quite common to have some kind of image in there. And we can even say that in table you can have a paragraph or multiple paragraphs if it's like, I don't know, some longer comparison. But simply speaking, the image is important for me as a general concept.
Yeah, I agree that the current simplification does not take that into account. I will run the available parsers and create a document with a table with an image inside and see what they return. Because they all work very differently. For example, some of them, like I think it was llama parse, it gives you the document structure and additional list of images where it just says that given image is on that page, but it doesn't tell you where exactly it is. So I will double check that. I think it's a very good point that right now we cannot express it.
And similarly, we cannot express that a row or a column spans multiple rows or columns. Like if you have a table that's not strictly rectangle, if you know what I mean.
Yes,
I can have a cell that's across multiple rows.
That is a very good observation. And I did that on purpose because at the end of the day, we always use Markdown to represent everything. And in Markdown, you cannot have a column that spans, like basically a cell that spans multiple columns. In HTML, you can, but in Markdown, you cannot. And actually, one of the parsers I was integrating with, it provides column span information, and for that connector, I decided to simply repeat this information. So if it spans for 2 cells, it's twice in this array.
I'm now looking at the common mark specification, and it's discussed how to basically do it. Yeah, but it's different Markdown parsers are representing this differently, so it's probably like extension or something like that.
Yeah, and some of the I think Azure Document Intelligence always uses HTML to represent a table, but the problem is that with HTML you have more tokens, And for the chunks, you can hit the chunk, the token count limit much sooner with HTML.
Yeah,
But
anyway, I
this-
think just the image or something that would be interesting to see how it could be represented in the table.
Does this document structure need to understand cross-linking? So we already talked about footnotes, and I mentioned endnotes, but so if you're parsing an academic paper, it's probably going to have a lot of source citations. So is the 2 in this paragraph ever going to be able to be linked to the second source in the endnotes, or is that up to the semantic thing to figure out later?
It's the latter. Yeah, if I remember correctly, they're just part of, for most of the readers, they're just part of the paragraph as a text. But when we are parsing raw markdown files that use actual links, then there is a way to represent a link, as you said.
So, a trouble that I'm having with this is your names are very, very, very generic, and your purpose is very, very, very nuanced. Right? This cannot be used to take a Word document, parse the Word document, and recreate the Word document. You're losing information at every step. So it's not a document DOM. It's a markdown without caring about the inline elements, vague course structure DOM thing. Like, it's not markdown, and it's not as rich of semantic as anything that Word or HTML can represent. It's kind of this nothing thing in the middle, but it's using words that suggest it's all the things. Maybe it's fine if it's in a buried namespace, but if this ever makes it into the shared runtime and gets ever spotted by IntelliSense, then it's going to be like, oh, you're doing document processing. You want a document image. It's like, no, you want a document image if you're using this one pipeline. Like,
I agree with you, and my initial goal was to be able to represent anything, but I realized that it would took me way more time, and it wouldn't help me to solve my main problem, which is RAG, like allow for retrieval augmented generation.
right, and if you want to call this RAG document, then sure.
Yeah, so yeah, I was thinking about the alternative names, and yeah, because I also want to avoid to use the name Markdown document, because I don't want people to think that it's like a library for building Markdown documents, right? So another idea I had was document content or ingested document, but for RAG document, I think I wouldn't mind calling it like this, but and it was make very clear statement about the purpose of it.
Yeah, because if you want to say that none of the extra bits matter as a generic concept in RAG, then that would be why they're leaving them out here. Because the fact that it's so lossy is what bothers me.
I totally get your point, but I read up that it's going to become part of the shared framework. It's also not part of Microsoft Extensions AI. It will be another extensions library that you can install on.
It probably won't ever be part of the console app shared framework, but I can certainly see it getting sucked into Aspire.
Yeah, we are going to provide a template that integrates it with Aspire. We actually have a working example in my repo. How do other people feel about the rag prefix for the document?
Well, it would have to be uncapitalized, right? So it would read like a rag. Might be unfortunate.
I mean, we can decide that it's important to be capitalized because you would confuse it for a word. But I mean, people say rag. Do most people who say rag actually know what rag means? Or is this actually just more matching what they would expect?
To me, it has a single meaning, but let me do a quick Google search.
The linens are too far away. I was going to pick one up and hold one. Yes, and then Chad has suggested if you're data ingestion that maybe you should call it data ingestion document.
Yeah, how about just ingested document? Or ingestion document?
That's fine with me. Anybody want to be different on that? All right, sounds like ingestion document it is.
But then, since I'm using the document prefix for all of the other parts of the pipelines and the elements, should the elements themselves also have?
Oh yeah. That absolutely
Okay.
every single one of your types.
Okay.
Your all your type names are too generic or too general. Generic means something different. So yes, I put all of the types in this proposal are prefixed with ingestion.
Okay.
And we'll even see if I get it right because I forgot to account for generics. All right. So we talked about this virtual. We talked about the naming. We talked about has metadata. I assume a section with no elements isn't common enough to bother with a has elements.
Yeah, it's in theory the readers should not return such sections.
So for table, I mean we've already had the a table within a table or an image within a table. What are the cells supposed to be? Markdown?
I think the cells based on the feedback from Easy, I think we are going to end up with a cell not of strings but of an array of document elements.
Okay, then if it's an array of document elements, then that seems fine. Otherwise, it's on your things you have both text and markdown, and so it's unclear what you would be expecting the table to have. So you want it string becomes ingestion document element. Okay.
Also on the image, we have the media type. Is it like a MIME type, or I think
Yeah.
it needs better name basically.
You like media types what we call it elsewhere in the framework, if it's the MIME type.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, binary data has a media type. ASP.NET MVC formatters has a media type. Whatever photos.ph asset is. Is that even one of ours? Why is it being indexed? Yeah, I see a lot of things that are using media type.
Got it.
I think MIME type was the original term and has been around for forever, so lots of things still use it, but it evolved to be media type, and media type is sort of the recommended terminology, but MIME type is still heavily used.
Under system namespaces, I'm finding very few hits. System data does seem to be where most of them are, though.
When I was preparing this proposal, I found one Stack Overflow question that answers the question like which should be used. And if I remember correctly, MIME type is used typically in the HTTP context. And other than that, we should be using media type. I will find it and share in the chat.
Yeah, just glancing at the API catalog, I see media type in a lot of system types and MIME type in very few. So system data services has a MIME type property.
So I found the answer. So content type is the name of the HTTP header field used to specify the media type. MIME type is the former name for media type. So media type is the proper technical term.
Okay. And then in your sample here, you said you initialized document with doc, so presumably that's what's showing up here in the markdown.
So
doc is an identifier.
Yes.
And then it has a
So
settable markdown property. Oh, because it's not a document element. It's its own thing. Okay.
Yeah. So for document, it also provides markdown. So plenty of parsers do provide the entire markdown, so it can be provided. But if it's not similar to section, we are just going to concatenate it, the sections together. So I think it should be also
Change to a method.
A method, and optional argument for the constructor, where people can specify it up front, and then the method will just keep returning it.
Okay. And there is a interesting question of should people be concerned with if it was specified in the constructor and that becomes different than what you would get from the concatenation approach, but I guess garbage in, garbage out.
But you know what? I think we can even go one step further, because I actually saw one person in the project using it in the wrong way. So they kind of ignored all of the document elements and they wanted to just basically parse this single property and reparse all of the header levels, all of that. So to be honest, I think we can even just remove it. Because
Okay.
it removes plenty of problems like cache invalidation and all of that. So
okay. Yeah, so I guess the last thing, and less people have other things that they're not talking about right now, is the discoverability of IEnumerable of document element versus enumerate elements or flatten or whatever you want to call it. Personally, I would think flatten would be alter the state of the document, not enumerate the document, because flatten is a destructive verb and enumerate is a non-destructive verb. So I would just call it children, or well, I guess children has so descendants if we want to use the XML term, or enumerate elements as the name of a method. Personally, But it-
Enumerate leaf elements.
oh, because it's skipping sections.
Yeah, it's just like a little more explicit. It's kind of what the flatten's trying to get at, I think. But you know, it doesn't imply mutation.
Enumerate content. What's the word content? Everything that's not a section.
Basically.
Because I guess that's true. The implicit enumerable skipping things, I feel, would be a surprise.
Yeah.
Of course, I also feel like if you think that people are skipping them, I don't know why you have it. But
Or you can flip it around, make it an enumerable of document section, and add a property for the flattened document elements.
This would be rather hard to implement. But yeah, so if somebody wants just sections, they can use the section property. And as I said, to iterate over all sections and all elements in the proper way, you have to use stack and all of that. So the reason that this method exists is that people, so far it seems that the users are very often willing to just enumerate the leaf elements themselves in the order they were defined in the document.
which certainly means they're not caring about structure. They're just trying to grab at the content.
Yep.
Which presumably would be the people who would have called document.get markdown. I'm just like, I don't care. Just what I wanted you to do was turn my docx file into a markdown file.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do we want to enumerate content?
I was thinking about name leaves because if this was a tree, it would be the leaves.
I like enumerate leaf elements.
Is the only container type that's the document element section?
Yes, and if there were other container types, I imagine we'd want to pass through, you know, it not include them.
No,
in this enumerator container.
Table's a container type now. Because this became a IEnumerable of, or this became an array of document element. So
Yeah.
is this going to show tables in the iterator?
Yeah, it should show the tables, but just the tables.
Okay, so you want enumerate descendants except for sections.
Given
This is
that,
why I
I
have
think content
proposed to call it flatten because I think it makes it more obvious that, you know, there are no sections. There's like one gigantic list of flat elements.
I mean, like, again, I feel like flatten is go modify yourself to remove structure. So flatten feels like, to me, unless we have a prior art, that doesn't feel like a enumeration behavior. That feels like a modification behavior. If we want to say enumerate flattened, then sure.
I think aggregate exception has flatten because I was using for prior art. Yeah, aggregate exception flatten, and it returns a new exception. So it's not void. So my feeling for flatten is if it's void, it means you are modifying yourself. If it returns something, it means you are not modifying. That's just my, you know, opinionated approach that I have no idea if it's the right approach.
Fair enough. I guess enumerate, or I guess if I'm looking in IntelliSense and I see that there's a thing called flatten, I would assume it's flatten thyself. If I saw somebody enumerating in a flatten, then I would find myself wondering if that was a fluent pattern that was change yourself and then return this, or if it was returning a new thing.
Another thing, the aggregate exception is interesting prior art, but like, well, I guess exceptions technically are mutable, right? Because you can change the stack trace. Like, I normally don't think of them as such. Like, I can't think of any methods or setters on, well, there's the stack trace. But yeah, I don't know if that makes a
So-
difference.
How about the get flat elements?
I don't know what a flat element is. Leaf element or content, I think, is better. I get the argument that it's technically not all leaf elements if tables contain elements, and
Yeah.
we're not enumerating those.
Yeah, that's why I think a semi-neutral term like content means that you're not being opinionated about what content is, and it doesn't need to fully explain it in the method name. The docs can say it enumerates all descendants, omitting sections. But not
So
the
would it
children.
be get content enumerator? Is that what you were suggesting?
No, using enumerate as the verb, like file.enumerate directories. Sorry, directory.enumerate
right.
files
So enumerate content.
would itself return an IEnumerator.
I like the idea of the enumerate content name.
So it'd be
Wouldn't you still want it to return an IEnumerable?
well, that I read what I wanted to read.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I figured.
So
And we can modify the class definition to no longer implement enumerable.
yeah, so then you'd say for each element in doc.enumerate content.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have anything else on this before we look at how it gets used?
So the document now have sections and have enumeration to the contents, both of them.
Yes.
And the content will enumerate sections too, right?
Yes, it will enumerate sections and the nested sections, and it's going to preserve the order of elements in the document.
So sections have the list of their direct children.
Yep.
Do we want to repeat the enumerate contents on sections, or do we just wait until someone asks for that? Because if you have it on here, then basically what all you would return from the document is return, if you're allowed to use link, then it would be return sections dot select many of section to enumerate contents.
Yeah, but
If you think it only makes sense at the top level, it's fine.
yeah, so based on my experiences, as I said, I'm working with a student, Krzysztof, who is writing a master thesis about implementing chunkers on top of this API. We didn't need the enumeration of section elements. So we didn't need the flattening there. And but we needed to do it for the entire document. And the reason is that there are some gotchas, like it's easy to mess up the order, and there can be multiple nested sections, so we need to take recursion into account as well. So this is why this method is implementing it, and the users don't need to worry about all of that. They can just iterate, and it does the right thing for them.
Sure, but that doesn't say why they wouldn't want to do the same thing for only the first section in a document.
Yeah, and as I said previously, we have typically two kinds of chunkers. Either the ones that care about sections or semantic content. So if they care about semantic content, they don't care about sections at all. They just care about individual elements and what they contain. And they use the flatten or whatever. If they care about sections, they just iterate over the sections, and they take care of the nested sections on their own.
Okay.
And in my project, I have like a single place where we do that for sections, and like more than 10 places where we do it for flattened structure.
Okay. So your protected internal constructor, so can only be derived by this assembly. All of your types are sealed. You have the one virtual thing, which is a method now. And we glued ingestion as a prefix in all of these names.
Yes.
All right. Anything else? All right. That only took an hour. We might not get through 5 things today. Data ingestion pipelines, extension 6895. Still Adam.
Yes. Hello again. For the rack, we need to process the document. So the first step is to read it, which basically means parse it. But there might be some implementations that actually don't parse; they just read it. So it's a reader; it's not a parser. And for the parser, we provide two kind of inputs: a file path or a URI. And since every document requires to have an identifier, we have two overloads. One when the users can specify the identifier in explicit way, and another one where we just use the file path or the URI itself as the identifier, and it just has two arguments.
Okay, so this is file path, comma file path.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry. Good catch. And when I was working on this project and I started to implement all various readers, initially I had also this was implemented as a class that has a single abstract method that deals with a stream, and two virtual methods that one takes a file path and another one that takes a URI. And the one was opening a file stream for async IO, the other was opening, like using HTTP client to open the link as a stream. But later, I realized that some of the services I was trying to use, like for example, Llama parse, they were always expecting me to provide content type in explicit way. So just for the stream itself, I was not able to provide it. And if I just give them a file path or a link, they figure it out based on the extension. I know it's not ideal, but this is how this particular service works. For other services, for example, Azure Document Intelligence, it absolutely does not care. You just give it a byte array and it will figure out whether it's a PDF, a Word, or whatever. And in a call I had today earlier with Steve Tope, Steve mentioned that maybe the solution would be to add an overload that takes a stream and a media type in explicit way. But when I was comparing this product to other data ingestion things, they typically support just file paths, or some of them also support URIs.
Would it make sense to add the stream anyway and let the file and URI just call the stream in the abstract?
Yeah, as long as it's a stream with and the content type, then we can do it. And actually, the Rift types, they can actually add a overload, that a new method that accepts a stream. And this is actually something I did for Azure Document Intelligence. And since Steve is currently silent, I'm going to mention another comment he wrote. Jeremy, if you scroll to the bottom, there is the comment that from Steve.
Actually, the bottom.
Yeah, where I'm going to read it out. Does this support parsing file path as URI? Assuming not, these overloads are going to be source of bugs. Developers typically expect that two overloads that are identical other than string URI parameter difference threat the string as URI. So to make it clear that the string should not be a URI, I could just use file info as the input.
Yeah. I actually thought it was asking. I read it initially as the other way around of, are things going to work if you give URI with a file protocol? I think HTTP client understands the file protocol, which is sometimes a source of security bugs, but I think it does. Yeah.
So I'm supportive of replacing the string with file info because it makes a very clear distinction.
It does. It also makes it really annoying to use.
Yes, and this is the only reason why I have not used it in the first place. But later you will see that at the end we have a pipeline, and pipeline supports actually three methods: processing URIs, processing files, and processing a directory. And for directory, I take directory info because it's very easy to differentiate. So basically, it's clear that it's like you're processing a directory. So maybe if we use directory info for the pipeline, then maybe it's also more sorry, I'm missing the word. Maybe we should be using the infos everywhere to be more consistent. Oh, that was the word I was missing.
Okay, and then presumably we call that file info source to match URI source.
Mhm.
And it'll pass like the path as the identifier or something. Okay, so do we, and we want to go ahead and add the stream and media type overload?
I will be thinking out loud. So if I manage to ship this library in October, it will be released as preview. And if I want to add such an overload based on user feedback in the future, and it's an abstract class, yeah, it would be a breaking change, right? Because suddenly everybody would need to implement it. Yeah, so if we want to do it, we should do it right now, right? So I'm okay with adding such an overload.
I mean, yes, you can't add an abstract. I mean, you could argue that your experiment identified the need for the abstract, but you generally can't add an abstract after you ship.
Yeah, but also when I was comparing, different products that, they typically work just with file paths or URIs. It's like some of them only support direct, like a file, a directory path, some like a list of files, and a subset of those support also URIs. So I haven't seen any of them using a concept similar to stream.
Yeah, but like got pointed out in chat that no one should use this. No one should ever use the URI overload because you can't configure things like HTTP trust, or sorry, TLS trust, etc. If it's just hidden behind somebody else is configuring all of these settings for you. So either you would need to expose all of the socket HTTP reader settings here, or basically, if this library becomes if this library becomes important, this goes on the SDL ban list because no one should call this.
But there are scenarios where people will be willing to use it because, for example, in Azure Blob Storage, you can make your blobs public. I don't encourage you to do that, but some of the services that I'm using, for example, Azure Document Intelligence, it supports just a link, just a URI. So it downloads the thing on its own, but it assumes it's public. So it's only for public things, and yeah.
Right. I'm just like. We've moved beyond the 1990s. URL fetches are safe, so I can almost guarantee that if this API becomes popular in Microsoft, the URI-based overloads will go on the banned APIs list. So,
okay.
Like,
yeah. So
it is what it is.
I agree. It works great with simple demos because you don't need to have the files. You can, for example, grab some, things from GitHub.
Yeah.
And yeah, I totally see somebody uploading files and making them public just to be able to use it because it's easier for them and running into big issues. So yeah, so in that regard, if we do add a stream overload, and we keep the file info, then maybe in the future I could reconsider adding the URI overload. That would be just a virtual method
Yeah. Well, I mean, why is it important that? So, Chad asked a question that I'll just ask now. What's the purpose of Document Reader?
To turn any file into a structure we understand and we can work with. So typically it's a cloud service like Azure Document Intelligence or Llama Parse or a local tool like Markdown. It's basically a parser in 99% of the cases.
Yeah, I'm a little bit struggling with why we think it's important to have a base class for it. If you have
You mean
virtuals,
base class.
I
Base class,
understand.
not an interface.
No, to have any abstraction for it at all. Like, if all you're ever going to do is say Azure Document Doodad, which presumably you're going to have had to give constructor parameters to, so you're going to really need to know what type it is, then unless you think that this is like a DI, I don't know, someone shoved a document reader somewhere in the universe, go find one. But it feels like any usage of this is going to be like new Azure document reader dot read async, at which point the base class saying you had to have a thing called read async barely adds anything. So I'm just wondering why we think the base class is important.
So there are some absolutely valid scenarios. For example, for development, you may be using a local tool like Markdown, but for actual production, you may be using Azure Document Intelligence, and you want to be able to swap those.
Right, but you think that you're actually going to have a local variable of type document reader that you call read async on, and you're not just going to say new, or I guess it's you want to be able to have a function give me the document reader for my current environment.
But
so you don't want to return that as a strong type?
But what we have as of today in the ecosystem is that you have various clients that can connect to those cloud services. For example, Azure SDK for Azure Document Intelligence or Llama Parse from Llama, but they don't map to a common format. All of them use like a different way to express a document.
Right. I was just looking for when is somebody going to use this type in their code, and I guess the helper method of open a reader valid for my current environment.
Yes. So users only in case of mocking, testing, and doing the DI. For me, it's building the pipeline, which is shown below, where the user has to specify some reader, so I can start the processing.
Fair enough. Fair enough, because with it being first, again, my expectation is you were just going to say new thing dot read async, at which point this type didn't matter. But yeah. So if there are
in general, I expect that 90% of the users will be using just the pipeline, where they have to specify a reader, and we'll later come to a writer as well and the chunkers.
Fair enough. Since we renamed document to ingestion document, instead of document reader, should this be document ingester? Or is ingestion what happens after this?
After. Okay. You read, you process, you chunk, you process optionally, and then you write, which is the actual ingestion.
Okay. Okay. All right. So do you want to go ahead and are you cutting the URI overload, or are you leaving it in now and just may not add it? I wasn't clear on which way you were planning on going with that. Like, should I leave the URI overloads in the approved state, or do you want to just cut them? And since
I don't need to have it approved right now, and I trust in your security expertise. And so if you say that it will be on banned list if it becomes very popular, then Yeah,
Right.
I will just trust your expertise and
Well, because it'll hit the like.
let's remove it now.
Yeah, it's
And
if you call this, is it doing certificate revocation checking? We tried turning that on by default, but we turned it off by default. But the SDL says you must turn it on. So if you call this overload, you can't comply with that rule.
let's remove it. And in case there is user feedback that requests it, then I can always re-add it as a virtual method, right?
Yep.
With a default implementation because it's an abstract class.
And do you want should the file one still be abstract, or should that one switch to virtual because you can implement it or you can implement a default behavior? If your things are going to need to know that I come from a file or some other stream from somewhere, then that would be a reason to consider being abstract. But like this one could just call this one.
Yes, absolutely. It should be virtual because
I guess I don't know how it's going to figure out the
as-
media type.
yeah, that's one thing. And I have seen plenty of people just using the extension check, which isn't great. But on the other hand, this is what people often do. Like they just have files and they don't care, and the extension matches the media type. So I think it can be virtual. Especially since most of the .NET devs don't know how to open a file stream for actual async I/O.
Okay, so you're going to say virtual, right?
Yeah.
Which is spelled with those letters in different orders. Okay, should this take an optional media type then?
Yeah.
To let the caller
That's
specify it? So I
Yes,
guess
absolutely.
that would be up here. Which really just means now identifier is an optional property, but I guess you've hit I have too many default parameters and I need a simpler one anyway.
But I'm not sure if we should be adding it to the first overload because we are using the default identifier there, so we can use default media type. And if you want to be explicit, then use the second overload.
Fair enough. Okay. Again, document reader.
Do we need the first one if we make the second one identifier is optional?
Yeah, that's a very good
right.
point.
So interestingly, that was the point that I was coming to, is if we make this an optional parameter, then now our guidelines for optional parameters suggest you should have a simpler overload that doesn't have the optional parameters. So the moment we make this optional, this method comes back. So so it doesn't matter.
No, we have a good reason now to have the first one.
Right. But whether this is a defaulted parameter or not, this one would come back. So at which point it's fine the way it's written here. Yeah, so we renamed document to ingestion document. Document reader is very general. Should this be ingestion document reader?
Should we just do it to every usage of uppercase document, which is like every usage of document in this API?
Yeah, probably, but
I'm okay.
At
with
least
that.
in the type names, maybe not in like the property name. I don't know.
Yeah, and the property it can get away with just being document. Okay. We're down to 20 minutes.
document processor should be ingestion document or not?
Yeah. So, why do you have an interface?
Yeah. Good question.
You mean a lambda would be enough?
So interfaces you can never ever change. So if you believe that ingestion document processor process async does absolutely everything you will ever need it to do, then an interface is fine. But interfaces are, in my opinion, almost always the wrong answer.
Yeah, so I can give you the answer to that. So initially they all were abstract classes, and only for the reader and the pipeline itself, it was actually beneficial to keep them abstract. And for everything else, after 2 months of development with another person, I didn't see the benefits of keeping it abstract. But I also don't mind making it an abstract class.
Right. I mean, the benefits of abstract are you can add a new method in the future, even if it's virtual throw. Like you just can't add another method on a interface ever.
Would you
Yeah.
mind making it a func?
It depends on if we need to extend it in the future or not. It's same question for interface, right?
Right, but
Yeah.
There's
I mean-
also like the discoverability too of like now you have the enricher and the processor that you would probably be static properties or something, or some function would return a func, some factory function. It might be better ergonomics as an abstract class. I was just curious.
Yeah, but on the other hand, with abstract class, you cannot do multi-inheritance. But on the other, I didn't need to do that for all of the processors we have implemented. So yeah. If based on your experience, you believe like that abstract class is more future-proof in 90% of the cases, so let's make it an abstract class, and that's it.
Yeah, or to Stefan's thing, the other extreme is you have one method called process. That's func. So, but if discoverability says you want to type, then yeah, I think abstract is better than interface.
Yeah, with func we lose the ability to go to base type and go to implementations, right?
Just to understand, this library is going to target .NET Standard or .NET Framework?
It is going to target the current .NET and .NET Standard.
Okay. Yeah, so interface is not good.
Yeah, and so far the only moment when I have been thinking about adding a new thing to processors and writer was when I was adding logging, and I was wondering whether they should have an ID or a name, like a property that says, "Hey, I'm alternative text enricher." But for now, I'm using the type to retrieve this information. But if we make it an abstract class, then I can just add it with the default implementation in the future, right?
Yeah, you're saying you would make a name property which is this.getType.name?
Yeah, exactly. So with abstract class I can do it. With interface I cannot.
Yep.
When I'm targeting full framework.
Yep. I mean, even if you're not targeting full framework, DIMs don't work. You can define them if you're not targeting full framework, but they don't appear on types. So you only get to see that things have a name property if you cast it to the interface. You don't. It because of the way that DIMs do light up, they.
I wasn't aware of that, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, I never had the opportunity to use them because I always have to support .NET Standard.
Yeah, they get explicitly implemented on all types. So the type pretends it doesn't have a member of that name. Or rather, the type doesn't have a member of that name. It's only when you're casting it through the interface that you get to see those members, which if you're doing interface-based programming, then sure. And if you're not, then now you're confused because, wait, I thought document processor added name. So yes, even the like, oh, I could use DIMS to fix this if it was an interface. In my experience, the experience is not good. All right, so this I turns into ingestion, and it becomes a class.
Yes.
Clearly, that was just a typo. You just left out some letters from a name that you didn't know yet. All right, then you have a chat enricher and a
Yeah. So in general, the project is split into two parts: the abstractions and the implementations. But since I kind of wanted to show what kind of things are going to implement them, I added them here as well. So the abstract ingestion document processor will be part of the abstractions project, but part of the data ingestion project will be something that takes every image in given document, and for those that don't have alternative text, it uses LLM to basically generate such an image, such a description.
Yeah,
And
on the one
reason for
hand,
that,
I don't really want to delay getting through the thing, but I'll just ask: does anybody think the abstractions assembly pattern in extensions is useful or practical? Like, do a lot of libraries manage to only get away with an abstractions reference? And is the saving in their compile time worth it for the overhead of having 2 assemblies load? And is it worth the people's pain of dealing with things?
Or I'm upset actually we don't have like Steve Tope here, but I mean, we have had like people like Christoph wanting to use the MCP C# SDK do sometimes care a lot about the size of packages in their dependency graph, especially if they're going to use it for like the Azure SDK or something like that. And yeah, I know in some cases we'll be like, what if we only reference like the abstractions package for DI, for instance? I don't know if it's relevant for everything, but it kind of makes sense as someone who's like providing services and stuff that like maybe you just need to add to like an iService collection, but you don't need to like pull in all of iService provider if the thing using it isn't all in on like hosts. I don't know. It is annoying sometimes. I see your point.
Yeah, I mean, because it like at the end of the day, it forces another assembly load because the types live in a different assembly, and many of them are going to be hollow, just because they have no semantic content inside them. But so I know that with like the crypto libraries with .NET Core 1, we started with, oh, obviously we want like cryptography abstraction things to go in a different assembly than the implementations of the things, and that A just got in our way, and B meant we just had to load another assembly at the end of the day because everybody needed to talk about something implementation-y. Like, you used a certificate, you need the implementation at runtime. So it didn't really save anything. It was basically all cost while pretending to have some benefits. So if we think it's useful,
yeah, like
we think it's useful.
Connect core apps these days, right? Like we moved away from shipping most of the core assemblies as NuGet packages, so it's like especially irrelevant. But for people targeting net standard and stuff, I still see it as useful. And of course, people can use things like dependency injection. I
mean, you can use DI without having a separate abstractions assembly, just like you can use DI without having interfaces. The question is, does like that pattern, extra assembly pattern, is that net positive or is it net negative? For crypto, it was net negative.
My take on this is that the problem I'm having with this pattern is that I very often see .NET developers adding abstraction project to their solution where they have only a single implementation and they don't even have unit tests that are using mocks because they have seen this pattern at Microsoft. So I have seen plenty of projects like this with abstractions that are not being, that there are no advantages of having them.
But
We're not doing that here though, right? Like,
Yes,
sorry.
we don't, but
Yeah.
if if you open any
I don't think
.NET
it's a
project,
thing
there's
you do by
plenty.
default, right? It's only if you think there's a need, then yeah.
And here, so as I told you, I implemented those various readers, and I want to kind of transfer the ownership to interested product teams. And one of them, I'm not going to call a name, said that we can add it to our SDK as long as it don't has a dependency to this library. So with the abstraction split, I don't have that dependency, but my implementation for most of the things will have that.
Sure, but it's things like an alternative text enricher doesn't seem like it's particular to Azure or Google or etc. Because if it is, that's not obvious in its name. And so then if you're saying, well, that lives in the implementation assembly, not in the abstractions assembly, it's like, well, things that are just built into the core feel like they should just be in the core assembly. And then once you start talking, oh, I want all the llama stuff, then sure, llama stuff should be in its own assembly because it's now you said you're gonna do those things, so it's gonna have its dependency graph is now gonna load in, etc. But if the dependency graph is just the abstractions, that feels like it just belonged in the same assembly as the abstractions to me.
Yeah,
I think
but,
you guys both hit the nail on the head. It's like when the non-abstractions package brings in other things into the dependency graph that it starts becoming desirable. So you can allow other people to take dependencies on like the core of your library without necessarily taking dependency on all the packages that your library uses to
but saying like
useful.
This doesn't belong in the abstractions library because it's sealed. It's like, well, I think it belongs in the core library because it's core. So I don't know what the abstractions library really means. But all right, anyway, continue. It's a thing to think about.
Thank you. Yep. So once the document is parsed and processed, we want to chunk it and then generate the embeddings. And for most embedding generators, they support only string as an input. Some allow you, actually, I think there are two out there in the wild that they allow you to combine like a string and images, but most just string. So the goal of this alternative text enricher is to ask LLM to describe every image so it can be included in the chunk and then in the embedding.
Why we call it alternative?
Because it's the image description is called alternative text because it's when you cannot display the image on the web, so the term alternative text is used. So I have just reused that term.
Or for XKCD, it's where the second punchline lives. But yeah, so this is taking a document and setting alt text if it wasn't already there. Or setting alt text even if it was there.
So most of the parsers, they are going to provide you with the text which is OCR. So let's say I have a logo with Microsoft. The text will be just Microsoft. The markdown will be like a link basically to this image, right? But the alternative text will say, you know, this is a logo of a company, Microsoft.
Right. Your document image already had an alt text property.
Right.
So my question is this set it if it's null or is this set it?
It's set when it's null.
Okay.
So when we are, for example, parsing a raw markdown file, which has its own alternative text, we are not overwriting it.
Okay, and you said this is sealed, and it's using, quote, an AI service. So how does it know? Is it the iChat client service is who it uses?
Yes.
Okay.
It's basically a prompt. It's
That's fair. Just making sure that you weren't hand waving and saying like we're picking who's doing the image analysis. Chat client can apparently do images.
yes. And
So should we call it image alternative text enricher? Because it's image alternative text. It's not any alternative text.
yeah, that's a very good point. Mm,
As opposed to like you thinking alternative text of text might just be a summary. So
but then, if we deal with image, is it just image or ingestion image? I hope it's just image.
I don't like once it's in. Yeah, I don't think that it doesn't need to be on ingestion. Doesn't need to be on everything. It just needs to be on everything that feels like it's going to appear in other projects. Like so, document processor. Like lots of things are going to call a thing a document processor. Removal processor also feels like ingestion removal processor. But yeah, I think that the name on this one is already weird enough that like yeah, maybe somebody else will come up with a alternative text enricher, and then you're like, oh, no, not that one. But it's not going to be like everybody all the time. So yeah, I didn't do like a bulk add on this one. We have to think more. But like again, a lot of your words like document chunk. Yeah, you're kind of being too general.
Now, is it just take document chunk? Would you take? I mean, the obvious thing to change it to is ingestion document chunk, but would you take ingestion chunk and like ingestion chunker and ingestion chunker options?
Because on the one hand, that does sound pretty foofy in general, but on the other hand, I've never really seen the word ingestion in any other product. So or project.
I think I slightly prefer that to having like ingestion document in all those places. Just I don't know how much document adds.
Yeah. But I like that the ingestion chunk is simple. So because we also have the chunker, but on the other hand, chunker takes a document and returns a collection of chunks. So there, the document in the name has some meaning.
All right.
But should we discuss the removal processor first?
Sure. So again, it
so-
feels like a overreaching name to me, but it's if you want to say that's the best name, I can easily hold my nose on this one.
As a non-native speaker, I'm not ever going to say that in front of this audience. Yeah, it's the best name I had. So the purpose of this utility is to allow the users to remove the elements they don't like. And since some of this could involve recursion, like for example, in theory, somebody could create a document with like a section that has a subsection that has a subsection that has nothing. Then they may be willing to remove all empty sections. So I just added this utility.
Yeah, really Oh, they're static. You're saying this is a processor that removes empty sections. This is a processor that removes footers. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I don't quite get it. Um, this is one of the cases that I actually wonder if nested types would be better.
You want a different type just because like the filter's different?
No. Like, so
Oh, you want it to be nested on the abstract type.
or something. So ML.net, they had a weird like API catalog attachment pattern that I actually wonder if it would be good here. They used extension methods for their catalog, which actually meant everything was super hard to use. So I don't recommend going that full route. But like if you're having a bunch of things that are just basically lambdas, it feels like you want to access them via methods and not types. So in fact, yeah, so that you basically get, document processing dot element removal, and then you give it the predicate. And document processing dot
I
add
see.
image alternative text, right? And so I wonder if a bunch of these types that you've made public so people can use them shouldn't be accessed via their constructors. They should be accessed via, like
Factory
link.
methods on the abstract.
Yeah, like we don't make the link select iterator public. We just have enumerable dot select, and then that gives you
Right.
a type that it tells you what the type is. It's a IEnumerable. It would tell you what the type is. It's a document processor, but it's not going to tell you I'm an alternative text enricher, because there's nothing customizable on it. There are no custom properties. You don't need to access anything. It's just a lambda.
Right. Like if there were custom properties or members that might be different, but that's I think valid.
But the abstract class will be living in the abstract project,
That
abstractions project. And it
should be part of the API proposal, what DLLs these live in, or packages. But
like I think your common options that are not attaching to any service, right? Like this guy is just a lambda.
Yes.
So what?
Actually, it's smart lambda that knows how to deal with the structure.
but it can live in abstractions.
fair
It doesn't
enough.
pull in new dependencies.
Yeah, since
or
it,
anything.
whether you call the abstractions or just the base name of the package, and it doesn't have any Google Cloud or Chat GPT or whatever integrations in it, that like the core thing you could have just document manipulation or ingestion document manipulation dot remove elements predicate, add alternative text.
Yeah, you are right. So, and actually, it could be even a method on the document type, right?
It could, but now you're mixing your state and your pipeline, which might be fine and might be weird.
Weird in that case.
And then if you want to make it like link and be extension methods off of document processing, then sure. But yeah, I think that you're having a lot of types here with a lot of generic names because they really want to be methods.
So you know what? I think that the best thing to do for now would be to exclude the removal processor from the API review, because it's a utility class I think some people will need. So I can just wait for the feedback and act upon it.
That feedback applies to alternative text enricher too, right?
Yeah.
But, so how exactly you would express it?
I just tried typing right here.
I'd quibble on the name
Sure, but
because
like
it doesn't do anything directly. It
Oh,
creates
and,
a thing that does the thing. But yeah.
minus typos. And even when I had made an extension method in case you want to be all link like.
Yeah, but this needs to become a part of a pipeline, and pipeline can deal with multiple documents. So it shouldn't be an extension method on a document. But
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be.
Fair enough.
I would definitely change it to like create image enriching processor or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, or
yeah, but
And this should be static class also.
no, it
Probably.
I mean the manipulation class, right?
sorry, I when I wrote sealed, I meant static. Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you want to put it like directly on injection document processor, which you could.
Yeah, I mean the built-in ones could live on there, though it would be weird if you're in a derived type and then you're like, get alt text add or doodad, and it's like, why
Yeah.
do I see this static method here? It's like, because it's your cousin. But yeah, so that would be the alternative shape, modulo the name. But instead of a public type, it would just be a single method. Because if everything is just the type is public, so the constructor's public, this does
Yes,
that.
so-
But now the names can be more general because they're contained within a class that has the ingestion document name.
I agree, but then to find out that this type exists, how do I get there? Because if I have a document pipeline that accepts I read-only list of ingestion document processors, I can click go to implementation and it will like disassemble something and find something. So I don't need to know that it exists, that the implementation exists. I know it asks me for an abstraction and I'm checking who is implementing the abstraction. But in that regard, I need, in this case, I need to know that this, factor utility exists.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is if it's the base place that you're putting a bunch of utility if it's the one place that you're putting a bunch of utilities, people will know it exists for the same reason they know link exists. It's if you're using this pipeline, every sample calls into this type. And you'd be like, oh, okay. What are the other things I can do to manipulate the document? Ooh, I can remove empty sections. Ooh, I can. And yes, and as Kevin just pointed out in chat, that's what the XML doc see also is for. So image document processor would say see also image document manipulation. Or, whatever we call the thing.
If they live in the same assembly.
Which they should.
Yeah, the manipulation and the implementation, yes, but the abstraction cannot mention the implementation.
No, I'm saying image document processor and image document manipulation should be in the same assembly. That is I am stating that definitively, not whimsically. They should be in the same assembly. Because it does not add a dependency. So the assembly boundary really should be about dependency management.
But this particular thing requires iChat client, which is a dependency.
It's a dependency that you don't think that, or you think that more than 20% of people who are using this namespace won't already have a reference to?
People not, but the SDK authors may. And an example that I was provided with from Azure SDK team is that Microsoft Extensions AI provides chat message, and Azure OpenAI also provides chat message. And if I have a dependency to Microsoft Extensions AI abstractions, which provides chat message, they don't want to be using my abstraction thing in their SDK because they believe that they're going to run into, the customers will be running into name conflicts.
I could see it. In iChat, this would be the only thing that would
Fair enough.
require that dependency.
Yeah, and the document processors are very specific because because we have the document processors and chunk processors. So for chunk processors, I have plenty of implementations. One that adds a summary, sentiment, keywords, like there are a bunch of them. But for the document processor, if we take the removal utility out of picture, then there is only one implementation, the alternative text.
Fair enough.
So
If there's only the one, then this sort of link like a catalog doesn't make as much sense.
I don't hate putting the removal one and the non-abstractions one, but I don't think it couldn't be there. But yeah, I think it's a matter of taste. Like if it means that it lives alongside the other built-in implementation to not put it in abstractions, I think that's a reason not to put it there. But
and I have just noticed that we are out of time.
Yep. I was gonna say, and while I normally would say I can stay late, I heard the walk down the stairs of you told me that we had to leave at noon, and now it's 10 after. So so I need to go.
Whoever that person is, I don't want to upset them. And for me, it's 9 p.m., so my brain is slowing down. So I also want to give my best.
So this will get. I'll mark it as needs work, and then publish the notes, and then mark it back to ready for review. But if I don't change the disposition, it doesn't show up in the meeting minutes. So.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation.
Yep.
Yeah, big thanks for your feedback and input. It was very valuable. I have plenty of things to think of now. And see you next Tuesday.
Yep. All right, and thanks everyone for joining online. And I guess we'll pick this up next session. So see you at our same .NET time on our same .NET channel. And until then, auf Wiedersehen.
Bye.